podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button below. Super excited for this episode. We are up to episode number 81. Joining me is Mike. Go ahead and give yourself an introduction.
Hey Dave, good morning. Thanks for having me on. As I said to you on the chat, I'm still intimidated about being here following Leah. Those are big shoes to fill, but excited to talk to you and interested to see where this conversation goes. Greetings from Rochester in Michigan. I live in the Midwest. I have a 9 to 5. I'm an immigrant to the United States. Been here since 2018, so my story is a little different, maybe from some of your other guests. And I'm in my 40s, married, with one kid that I know about, and he lives in the house with us.
Interesting. So, where did you immigrate from?
South Africa. So
Right.
hence the T-shirt. That's the national anthem on the T-shirt. So I thought I'd wear that today just to make things interesting.
And so in 2018, you say you're in your 40s now, so you were probably in
hmm
your late 30s, early 40s in
Early
2018. What
40s.
made you decide to move to the US?
I got a transfer with the company I was working for, and they asked me to come across to the US to head up one of the business units in America, and that's how we got here. Yeah, imagine that in when we were at home, we were well on our way in terms of financial planning for our retirement, and then this move happens. That disrupts a lot of your planning because you suddenly on a different trajectory, on a different pathway in life, and regardless of what your company does to relocate you, it still costs you personally quite a bit of money to move an entire family unit that's pretty well established into another market, right? But
Yeah.
you're moving into a market that's super exciting. It gives you access to a global financial power as the United States, and an economic market you can invest in, where in South Africa you're pretty much limited to 30% of your investments to be outside of the country, right? So it's a shift change, and it's a big gamble that you take. But I think we're looking back 5 years, best decision we could have made.
Yeah, wow, that's an amazing story. And so, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that sort of, you're in South Africa, you've got this nice
Yeah.
trajectory, this path that you think is taking you towards
hmm
retirement. Um, and then the upheaval happens. So, I guess first let's maybe talk a little bit about that life in, growing up and that early career in South Africa.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm mixed race, so I'm the last generation to come through school under the apartheid regime. I was very lucky. My folks were able to send me to a private school, which meant that shielded a little bit about those realities. Although, um, you know, because of my race, I couldn't go to certain beaches with my family. My parents never voted in an election, and those kinds of things. To give you a strange example, my parents, when they got married when they were in their 20s, they needed a license from the government to have white people at their wedding. So that kind of gives you a level of insanity in terms of where we are. But in the 80s, things started to relax a little bit more, especially in Cape Town, where I'm from, and into the 90s. But yeah, I was fortunate. I took advantage of that and built a successful career in mostly in the automotive industry, and then in IT and technology, and that's what powered my ability to be relocated. So where preparation met opportunity, right? I mean, the definition of luck.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and just coming back to that trajectory. Yeah, of course, you set yourself up. The smart people will tell you around $2 million will do it, and you translate that into local currency, and that's your target. So not much has changed. However, the way you do it in, let's say, North America is very different to in the South African space. But yeah, that sort of summarizes the story, right?
Yeah, wow, that's very hard for someone like me who grew up his entire life in Canada to even uh, even begin to comprehend what people went through in South Africa through apartheid and all of those years. And I, I honestly, I have no words for it. Like, because I honestly, I can't relate. I
That's
just
a whole
can't.
other podcast, man. That's a whole other podcast. We can do that some other time. We can jump into that water.
Yeah, well, let's get into investing and sort of what your
Mm,
portfolio looks like, what you like investing in, sort of what sectors, what businesses, um,
sure,
and
sure.
how that
Um,
portfolio looks different now that you're in the US.
right. So 5 years into the game, and let's say the first year and a half, just reestablishing the basics, right? So some of the fun things about immigration into the United States: when you arrive here, you have zero financial history that's recognized. So you're pretty much coming out of college in your 40s with no credit history. You've got to go and buy yourself a credit card and back that credit card and build up a credit score because you have none. So the banks are jumpy to give you a home loan, they're jumpy to give you a car loan. So you really start at nothing, right? I mean, which is interesting, right? It's a complete reset. Fast forward 5 years, yeah, we're established. We bought a house in 2018, which was great. We were 6 months after we arrived. We found a place, and we've benefited from that. In our neck of the woods, property values have jumped 30% since 2020, and we managed to get a great interest rate relative to where they're at now. So we're that for us, that's the first rung, right? Got to put a roof over the family's head, and get that going. So that's great. Credit scores well into the upper 700s, early 800s now, so that's good. So we're starting to benefit from that. But those are foundational. And when you talk to somebody in their 40s, that's not something you should even be thinking about when you're talking about investments and retirement strategies and dividend policies. But I just wanted to put that context in place because it's
Right.
important to understand everybody's path is different. I earn a great salary. I won't lie to you. I earn, let's say, coastal salaries living in the Midwest. So I'm very fortunate that we can accelerate. But I've lost a lot of time, right? And therefore the money has to accelerate in order to balance out the equation. So absolutely max as much as I can on the 401k, and put everything back into that, about up to the 6,500 this year that we can put in. So that's let's say table stakes to what we need to do. And then I invest on top of that, on average, around, I want to say $2,000 a month into private portfolios. And what I've done now is I've realized, and I'm still learning the game, so to speak. 5 years in, I'm still paying my school fees, right? I'm very fortunate that I can leverage credit because of what I earn, right? And therefore, I'm right now in the middle of due diligence on a small business, that's gonna give me an let's say a net income of around $120,000 a year. It's an existing business. I'm buying it from a retired family. I'm going to gear that business a bit differently, so I'm expecting to gross out of that business, before taxes, around $80,000 a year. And the plan with that business is keep it going, make the investments I need to keep it going, and automate that so I don't get sucked into it. But take every cent of that and put it straight into a share portfolio that makes sense. And that share portfolio, I'm not that smart, right? I'm never the smartest guy in the room. I think that I don't think I can outsmart the S&P 500. So most of it goes into ETFs around that space. I like VOO. I like O from a realty perspective, purely because I think I'd suck as a property manager, and I don't think I have enough time to do that as well because for me, real estate investment is never passive. It's always active. I've had a rental property in South Africa before, and if you don't have a property manager helping you out, it becomes impossible to deal with. So So that's my philosophy. I spread the load. I take some calculated gambles based on the industry that I'm in. And it's quite topical right now because everybody's talking about NVIDIA. And I happen to work in the software-defined vehicle space in the automotive industry. And that's all around autonomous vehicles and how to make things more complicated in a product that we've successfully managed to uncomplicate in 100 years. And now we're going to go the other way. So I'm very fortunate I'm exposed to a lot of discussion at boardroom level around what the hyperscalers, so Microsoft, Google, and AWS are doing, as well as what the automakers are doing and their suppliers. So I leverage that because you always use your superpower, right? What do you have inside? Well, not inside, but you're absolutely exposed to strategic planning, and then you make a calculated decision on whether those people are gonna really deliver on that result, right? So, so that's quite interesting, and we can get into a little bit of that if you want to.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
that's it. I observe the American people with interest. I follow them. When I used to go to the office every day, I'd pass 4 Starbucks on the way to the office every day. And when I fly, I pass probably 2 or 3 Starbucks in every major airport I go through, and those places are never empty. There's always a queue.
Right. Yeah.
And I think pumpkin spice is a huge draw every fall. So, I'm not stupid. I'll put some money there in those kinds of businesses. And I think Americans who own homes love to improve them, and therefore I'll take some Home Depot shares. Thanks very much. I'm
Right.
happy with that. And I think Americans love credit. So I'll take some Visa shares. Thanks very much. I think you don't need to be smart to do that. I think it's just common sense, right? And so
Yeah.
that kind of sums up where I am, right?
Yeah, wow, I heard a lot there, and that's great. So, sort of first, your number one priority is that house, that roof over your head, and that's great. Congratulations that you were able to do that so early with that major adjustment in 2018. Like, that's a huge life change, obviously. And
Hmm.
then the second thing you said was maxing out that 401k, which I know is an American thing. We have similar other accounts here in Canada, but
Similar stuff in Canada, yeah, yeah.
so right away, you've kind of checked the first two boxes, and then you get into talking about a few different stocks. I heard Realty Income, ticker symbol
Hmm.
O in there, which is I agree
Hmm.
with you. REITs are a fantastic vehicle uh, to have exposure to real estate without the headache of being a landlord. I absolutely love
Yeah.
REITs for that exact reason. And
Hmm.
then some great comments there. Starbucks, yeah, there's always a line, or as you said, a queue,
Every time.
and so, yeah, why wouldn't you? And, um, you mentioned
Visa,
Visa and Home
yeah,
Depot. Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
Like, over the years,
It's
I've spent a
simple,
lot of
man.
money at Home Depot and Lowe's, right?
Everybody does, right? And you just have to think about the market. I think that with interest rates where they are, and then the crunch in the middle class, I think people will either buy down and improve going forward, or they're going to stick with what they got and keep it going, right? So
Right.
it makes sense, right? And of course the silicon providers like Nvidia, Qualcomm, Unity is another one you should think about looking at, because those silicon or chip providers are going to be critical to the auto industry going forward. Everybody's placing bets there. There's a battle, by the way. There's a battle. So here's your hot tip for the day. You need to think about this in the auto industry. You've got to realize there's a battle going on around the software that sits around the silicon providers or the chip manufacturers. So I'll give you an old example to illustrate the point, and you can take that into that thought in your brain around chip providers. So today, if an auto manufacturer wants to update the gearbox settings on the auto box on their vehicle, as an example, they have to go to a company that's like Posse Electronics or Continental, who has the control units in the vehicle, and then they go and tell those folks, okay, change this, and then there's a update for your vehicle that comes in the post, and you go in and they put the fancy laptop in, they plug it in, and it recalibrates that stuff, right? So that's actually software that's owned by those suppliers, and the auto manufacturer has to pay them every time they want these things done. and they're locked in. They don't have a choice, right? So
Right.
it becomes a whole black box. That's all they've got. And with the chip shortage and this new technology-driven way of doing things, you're going to find the auto manufacturers wanting to go that. So they want to disassociate the hardware, the actual chip, with the software. And the chip manufacturers are going to say, no, 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 we're going to help you out. We'll keep the software and you just pay us and we'll. So you can see the Battleground lines being formed already, right? So on the one
Right.
hand, you're going to place a bet on the fact that there's going to be chips in every vehicle, which is a great bet, right?
Yep.
And you can take your pick, whether it's Qualcomm or Nvidia or whoever. And then you're going to have to think about, well, are they really going to sell their full stack or are they only going to sell the chip? And nobody knows the answer to that just yet, right? So that's an interesting thing for you to think about on Sunday afternoon, Dave, while you're pondering the problems of the world, and then place your bets accordingly, right, folks? Um,
Right.
so that's interesting. Um, and and the other one that I mentioned earlier was Unity. So Unity is a gaming engine that's used in a lot of. Um, oh, I think I've lost you there.
Oh,
Dave, are
did
you
I
there?
lose you?
Yeah, you lost me for a second. Maybe you just repeat that piece. Another one that's interesting is Unity. Unity is a gaming engine that's used in lots of computer games, which is really cool. That's going to continue, but they're also making a play in the auto industry around autonomous drive, right? So how do you process all that video and sensor data fast enough that you can make it? So I'll leave that one with you as another one that's interesting. I've taken a small jump into the pool, so best of luck to all of us.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I definitely want to dive deeper into the automotive industry because
Sure,
it sounds like you know quite a bit about it.
a little bit,
Obviously, there was there was news this week of General Motors partnering with Tesla on the superchargers, and obviously Ford had already done that a
right?
couple weeks prior. So I guess what are your thoughts on what those deals look like in general,
Mm.
and how that is going to look moving forward?
Right. Um, so public charging infrastructure is an interesting place. You don't make a lot of money out of it. It's a convenience thing because you can't really price for convenience. It's an open space, right? Um, so so here's my controversial view. Tesla's got a great position today. If the auto manufacturers figure their legacy issues out and bring product to the market in a way that makes sense, then Tesla is in danger of losing that dominant position or at least weakening, right? They have got or have had up until now their own charging infrastructure, which has been a huge success for them. Although, albeit that in certain parts of the world there's already queuing happening in that space, so the customer experience in that public charging is diminishing. The other thing you need to think about is mass market, right? So even today, I would say that the majority of people, of early adopters in Tesla as a product have choices in the driveway. They can choose the Tesla or another product. So if there's a problem, they can jump in another car. Um, as mass market EVs deliver into the communities, you're going to start selling cars to people who don't have driveways, who don't have access to power in the garage. And therefore, public charging load is going to be it's a ticket to the game to buy a Tesla because you create the network. You have to answer the load anxiety, the range anxiety question by putting infrastructure in place to allow people to adopt the vehicle. That's the logic. And for me, it's a necessary thing because it helps to standardize power charging across brands, which will help take away the problem they had in Europe, where at one point, even if you had the most popular charging cable in your trunk, you couldn't access more than 40% of the network because they were all so different. So its standards are important. I think that it's a risky move for Tesla because it means that they open their one, let's say, competitive advantage to everybody else, but they're going to make money out of it. Um, and
Right.
if they don't, let's say, bring new product to the market, um, and realistically bring it to the market, like actually produce it and sell it, right? Then my countryman needs to put his money where his mouth is. Let's put it that way. Um, then they might be in danger of being the Kodak of the EV industry, right? Which is a controversial statement to make right now because look at the share price and the forward valuations and I'm saying, yeah, that's great. At one point, Kodak had the only digital SLR patent on the planet, and look at them now. So nothing is forever in this industry. Um, and I love Tesla. I've got shares in them. I'm not a fanboy. I look at it realistically. I ride the wave because everybody else is, right. But
Right.
but I think that the auto industry is difficult to manage. And the legacy auto players are not going to lie down and go out of business, right? They're going to come out fighting. And General Motors, for me, has a war chest. If you remember a couple of years ago, they closed most of their overseas operations. They came back to their home markets. Mary Barra's great. She knows what she's doing. And I think that if they have enough time, and they will have the time, you will see the change shift over the next 5 years. And I'm interested to see how it all pans out. But, Tesla, what do they say? It's always easier to win a championship than to keep it. And I
Yeah.
think right now Tesla's in that space, right? So let's see what they do.
Just to follow up to that, with
Yeah,
GM and Ford partnering with Tesla, does that force Toyota, Honda, and all the others to follow suit?
right. It's like I'll show my age now. It's now Betamax versus VHS, right? Who's going to win the battleground? I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that at the moment, I know they're making adapters for the plugs, so that they could use it. Actually, how it comes to fruition and how much pull it puts in them. Even for GM and Ford is going to be interesting. There have been many automotive joint ventures and agreements that have been made, and announcements that have been made, where they pour billions into it and nothing happens, right? It will depend on what the quality of those plugs are, and the experience at the Tesla infrastructure, right? Um, if you end up queuing for 20 cars to charge, that's not a great experience, right? I think
Right.
what should have happened right up front was that the authorities should have mandated a standard plug charging um, 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 description and size and fit and capability across North America, because we're a porous region, right? I mean, Canada. I mean, you guys, we're literally neighbors, right? I could get in my car and come to you right now, right? There should be
Yep.
no difference between Canada, the US, and Mexico regarding public charging infrastructure, because that would simplify things for the consumer. Everybody would know how to use it, and it would make it cheaper as well, right? But they haven't done it yet. So this is part of our problem. We as the public have to sort out now, and the companies, right? So it's still, let me say, school's out, right? Let's see how it really goes.
Yeah, the comparison I've made in the past is, could you imagine if you had to, go to one gas station for a Toyota and a different gas station for a Honda and another gas station for a Ford? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Exactly, it absolutely makes no sense. And if you look at the trucking community, it's exactly, they've done it right. At the ACT conference in California a month and a half ago, they made an announcement where they're going to share public charging, heavy voltage infrastructure for trucks, and then they'll standardize straight away. That makes so much sense. It's a no-brainer. Yeah, it's a no-brainer there.
Yeah. Moving on from the auto
Sure.
auto industry, what else does your portfolio look like?
So it's definitely S&P 500. So I cover the whole market, and that's the biggest holding. And then on individual shares, I really like Waste Management. I like 3M. I know they're having trouble at the moment, but they're so diversified. I'm buying what I can. That's not a company that's going anywhere. I like Pepsi Cola. I think they're great. I think that Americans love to snack, so we'll take some of that. Thank you very much. And Visa, I would say those, and oh, of course, we've spoken about before. So those are really my, let's say, top five. And AbbVie, from a pharmaceutical perspective, I think they're great. I know they've lost a lot, some of their patents to public now, but I back them. I think they've got enough pedigree to pull it through. And then Microsoft would be my last one that I like, because with the way the world is moving. I don't know about you, but if I have 20 Teams calls a week in my 9 to 5, it's a little, and every one of those calls there's a license fee being paid, and therefore Microsoft's not going anywhere. I think they will dominate through my useful life anyway. So that's my perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you're very similar to my strategy. You know, I'm sure you've seen me tweet, turn that cash register around. So either it's companies that you use yourself,
Yep.
or several other people do, like you said, the Home Depot and the Visa and Starbucks. Is just like it just makes sense to invest in the companies that everybody uses. Did I lose you again? Are you there?
Yeah. You can't bet, right? 400 million people can't be wrong. So back what they use and consume, and you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So that it's a very simple philosophy, right? And I look at what we spend in a very middle class suburb in the middle of the United States, and I go, well, I think that makes a lot of sense for all of us, right? And what we spend on, everybody else is spending on. I go to Costco once a month, so
Makes sense to me.
I think it's not going to change, right? It's not going to change. And if you drive around strip malls and big buildings where I go to meetings, and you drive past the waste area, there's a waste management bin sitting there 8 times out of 10, right? If you go to Portland
Right.
on business and you're outside at 5 a.m. outside the hotel, what goes past the hotel? Waste management trucks, right? So it's
Yeah.
and people are buying online, and I love big brown trucks that come and deliver things. So put some money there, because those guys aren't going anywhere, right? That economy has to deliver. So that's really as easy as it gets.
Yeah, like, you know, very similar to my own philosophy of just like I said, turn that cash register around, invest in the companies that you use,
Hmm.
and all these other companies that you're mentioning that everybody else uses. Yeah, we have waste management here in Canada as well. So like they're in. I don't know if there's in any other countries around the world, but they're very large in the U.S. and just as big in Canada. So
Yep.
it makes sense. Yeah, there's waste management bins, waste management trucks, and you see them going by,
Right.
and
And
they're coming every week or every few days to pick up those bins, right?
exactly. And I also look at sort of what's coming in the future a little bit, right? So everybody's harping on about these electric vehicles. So what do you need to conduct electricity in a vehicle? You need copper cable, right?
Yeah.
And we'd be foolish not to think about mining and industrials around that kind of space. Um, I think we're also on a big charge, and it will grow, regarding disregard the politics, but clean energy and the drive for solar and wind um, will require infrastructure investment, right? And Biden's got this new plan that's been passed, and they're going to build bridges, and they're going to build infrastructure. So steel and copper are still fundamentals we should look at, and do a little bit of analysis around that. There are probably 2 or 3 companies in each of those kinds of forward-looking things over the next 10, 15 years that are probably 60, 70% of the market, and we should look at those kinds of things and say, well, let's put something down there and see what happens, right?
The only non-dividend paying stock I have in my portfolio is it's called Standard Lithium,
Yes.
and it's very similar to what you're mentioning about copper going into the EVs. Going to take a lot of lithium for all those batteries, right?
They're all placing bets on it, right? And it's something that has to happen eventually. There's going to be a demand pull, right? And you hear it if you read the investor day strategy documents, which I love reading, by the way, because it really tells you where they're selling, right? I mean, spend some time reading those kinds of things when you're doing analysis. The raw material input products are one of the biggest risks to those kinds of industries, and it affects everything, right? It's not only the car and the drive; it's the delivery vehicles. It's 75% of the freight in America is driven by road, right? So it's the trucking guys.
Yeah.
It's our foundational economy that's going to be impacted by these kinds of alternative fuels, and the inputs that go into it are massive, and the requirements will be immense. And and you've got to respond to those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I'm trying to do a new thing here on the Passive
Sure.
Income podcast where I keep the episodes a little bit shorter because I in the past I'd have several guests, and myself included, where we just get rambling on, and all of a sudden we're well over an hour. So, and I know it's hard to keep people's attention for a full hour, so
Right.
I'm trying to just shorten it down. So before we sign off, you have anything else that you'd like to, any parting wisdom?
Yeah, I think I've got a 16-year-old. He's just opened his first trading account, and he's just got his first part-time job. I think I always talk about 18 summers with kids. You get 18 summers to really make an impact. After that, you still have a great relationship, but it changes, right? And
Yeah,
and and I think we don't spend enough time having honest conversations with the young people in our families about the real risks of financial independence, and having, because they're going to face a challenging world, and I try and spend as much time as possible talking about doing the necessary research, saving half of what you love, what you bring in, even if it's at $10 an hour. Do it from day one,
right.
and build those three pillars of a cash emergency fund, your retirement funding when it comes, and your investment strategy. And I would just encourage all of us to do that, and wish everybody well on the journey. And if you're listening to this podcast, you are already better than 70% of the market, right? You're already at the top 30 because you're thinking about it. So yeah, and Dave, great for you. Well done for you to invest your energy and time in these things, because
Yeah, thank you.
it's valuable. And even when you think it isn't valuable, it is, because someone will hear it, and if even one person makes it a positive change in the way they think about their lives, I think that it's a job very well done, and you're to be congratulated for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, that's kind of the whole point is just to try to, like you said, change one person, hopefully more than one.
Yep,
I also think that's great advice to, talk to your kids, your children, through those, like you said, those first 18 summers, and make sure you get them set on the right path, because I'm sure very similar, we're in the similar age group. I'm a little older than you if you're still in your 40s, but, our parents didn't talk to us about finances, right?
exactly.
So I think that's an important point to make, that change. I not what type of change that is, like that. Just the change, just change it.
Yeah, just have honest conversations, right? I mean, when Daniel was 10, I took the Monopoly set from the house. I took all the cash out of the little drawers, and I put
Yeah,
my pre-tax income on the table. And I said, "This is what Dad earns." And he went, "Wow." And I said, "Okay, and this is what I have to give the government because I have to pay taxes." Right? And I put it aside.
yeah,
And then I said, "Okay, do you like the house we live in?" "Yeah, Dad, it's amazing." "Okay, well, it costs us money to live in the house." Take that off the table. Of course, the pile gets less and less. It wasn't
very quickly,
very
right?
quickly. And do you like having the two cars in the drive because mom needs to go to work and dad needs to go to work? So let's take, we got to pay for the cars. The cars goes up. And
Yeah.
it was trying to show him
Do you
visibly.
like eating every day? Well, groceries cost
The
money.
fridge costs money, right? The refrigerator costs
Yeah.
money,
Do you
but
like? Yeah. Do you like having
internet,
electricity and
yeah, and phones and tablets and all this stuff. Yeah, but for me, it was a visible demonstration of what it costs, because it's not visible, right? There's no dad doesn't come in anymore with a paycheck, with a pay packet, right? It's all in the bank, it's all on the card. It's just swipe and
right.
go. The kids don't see the cash changing hands, right? And I started with him with that because it was the one way to show him how physically what happens to the money when you owe people and when you can keep it, and what you can do with that
Right.
money to make more money, right? So it maybe that helps somebody. It's a great way to physically show younger kids what it means without putting them under pressure, right? I mean, you don't want to freak them out, but it's a good way to start getting them to think about, that we have to make choices with the cash that we get, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Before we sign off, I'm just gonna pop your Twitter page up here. You can find Mike at Bancana 1975,
Yep.
the cheap seats.
Yep.
So feel free to give Mike a follow on Twitter. And just one quick shout out as well to Patrick over at Buy Investing Shirts. So as you can see, you can get all that passive income Posse merch, the coffee mug, ball cap, t-shirt, hoodie, and the toque there as well. So yeah, please feel free to check out Mike on Twitter, check out the links in the description, and be sure to subscribe.